Namao Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sanyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. This morning, after our morning class, we're going to have a initiation ceremony, and your cameras can't see, it's right in front of me, but a yagya arena where mantras and oblations of ghee into the fire and grains and so forth. The ceremonial part of initiation. The topic is the importance of having a teacher or guru. Now we'll start kind of in a simple level. In a simple level, in this world, knowledge is revered. Worldly people look up to somebody who is very learned and very wise and has vast wisdom. It's an opulence, according to our Vedic texts. It's one of the 6 principal opulences of the Supreme. And in order to acquire knowledge, even in worldly circumstances, generally, one goes to a teacher. Now, there's 2 processes, according to Vedic teachings, 2 processes of knowledge. One is ascending, and the other is descending. And the ascending process is not recommended by the Vedas, although it's a process much more common. But people acquire knowledge by step by step, learning more, becoming more qualified, learning more. We get it when you get a chance to backpack. And the instrument, the faculties that are used for ascending knowledge are senses to perceive things, and then senses are imperfect. It's one of the Vedic teachings. And then when you process that imperfect knowledge, and the processor is imperfect or makes mistakes, subject to illusion and tendency to still knowing those 3 things, saying what's what. So that means teachers, by the ascending process, it's fallible. The teaching is fallible, the teachers are fallible, and it's not the recommended method of learning, but it's certainly most common. And knowledge is expanding and expanding and expanding by the ascending process. I'm tempted to speak something about cosmology because it's one of those empiric teachings that are within the Vedas that modern educators and scientists are exploring. And in short, the picture of modern scientific cosmology is getting closer and closer to the Vedic picture of cosmology. Let's say specifically the size of the sun, the different distance between the Earth and the moon, or the Earth and the sun, and so forth and so on. empiric teachings are getting closer and closer to the Vedic conclusion. But if one wants to learn cosmology, you can take astrophysics and get a PhD in astrophysics and learn something about cosmology. Then there's a descending method where the source is a perfect person, and the perfect person delivers perfect knowledge because they're a perfect person, and one just has to have one's receiver on. And of course, fine tune your receiver because the transmission of knowledge is perfect. That's the descending process. Of course, both processes require faith. You have to have faith in your senses to perceive. You have to have faith in your processor to process that information properly and to reach proper conclusions. That is to say, it's for example, in the world of science, it's very common that even the senses are imperfect. Different perceivers of that data will read the data differently. It's common. Some perceive this, some perceive that. Some process it this way, some process it that way. And there's not agreement commonly amongst those who are the processors of data or information. So it's not reliable. Then similarly, from descending knowledge, we still require our ear to hear and the mind to process, and those are fallible instruments. But at least the faith that the source is correct, then gradually, according to the descending process, my processors become elevated, that is, the mind becomes cleansed, the senses become cleansed, the intelligence becomes cleansed, the discriminating factor to choose between options of how to understand properly, gradually. It's a descending process, is recommended by the Vedas. So back to the topic, the necessity, the importance of, and say it stronger, the necessity of a teacher in order to receive proper teachings. Even persons that are now scientists that are going further and further, the capacity to go further and further has come from education, from some educators. So the Vedic teaching gives us this understanding that, put in simple terms, if you want perfect knowledge, you have to get that perfect knowledge from a perfect person or perfect source. And then faith is going to help you understand what that perfect source is. And within the Vedas, if one invests faith in the Vedas as that source of knowledge, then the origin of everything, the supreme personality of Godhead, is the best source. The Vedas are emanations from that personality of Godhead, and then one needs a transmitter of that knowledge, that is, a teacher who has received that knowledge in a proper way and is transmitting that knowledge as they've received it, meaning no monkey business, no changing of the sound vibration. And that's what a guru is. By again, simple definition, receiving knowledge from the transcendental source and then reproducing that sound vibration. Just transmitting transcendental knowledge as it is. Prabhupada gives this very simple metaphor, the metaphor of a postman. Somebody writes you a letter, and the business of the postman is to see who is the recipient of the letter. They don't open the letter and change the message and then seal it back up again and deliver it. They just deliver the message. he calls it a postal peon to indicate it's not the peon is not a flattering term. It's just a very simple function. Here's this is for you. Here's the message for you. Here's the letter. So Guru is like that. The message is from Krishna, and the message is for us, and the Guru delivers the message unchanged. That's the Guru function. Now, there's some nice Vedic statements that Srila Prabhupada referred to consistently whenever this topic would come up, so I'll just make reference to them also. The person who's on the receiving end of transcendental knowledge needs some qualification to receive it properly. And the Sanskrit is jigyasu shreya uttama. Jigyasu means to want to know, or inquisitive. Inquisitive, jigyasu. But inquisitive about shreya uttama. Shreya means long-term benefit. Little Sanskrit meanings here. There are two terms, prayas and shreyas. Prayas means short-term, shreyas means long-term. The common example is given is a child likes to play. And at a certain stage of their life, their proclivity for playing, it needs to be put on hold, that short-term happiness for some longer-term happiness. You have to go to school. You have to go to school because at some point in time you'll become an adult and you're going to need knowledge in order to function in an adult life. So that's the shreyas. Prayas, short-term. Shreyas, long-term. And then uttama means topmost. Tama means darkness, and uttama means above darkness or topmost. So the qualification for a person approaching a spiritual master or a spiritual teacher is being inquisitive. Basically, I want to know what's beyond all of this temporary. I can say from my own subjective experience, a few years ago I was a college student, and I was curious. I knew there was chaos in the world. It was during the Vietnamese War, and it was like a lot of people yelling at each other from both sides, the war and the anti-war people. And I found the anti-war people were as violent as the war people to get what they wanted. So why is this chaos going on? Why is there inhumanity of man to man? Those kinds of things. What's beyond this chaos? There's a higher reality. What's that higher reality? I want to know. Not only I want to know, I want to be in association with that higher reality. That's the jigyasu shreya uttama. You know, the language of expressing that inquisitiveness is different. Not one fixed or stereotyped form, but it's wanting to know what's beyond all that is temporary. What's the ultimate destination of a living entity? What's this mission of the human form of life? Or different ways of expressing. Mine was, there's a high reality. I know that I don't know, and I want to know. 3 things. Really simple. So that's jigyasu shreya uttama. That's a one has got the receiver on. And for such a person, tasmat guru prapadyeta jigyasu shreya uttama. That's the second line. Jigyasu shreya uttama. Such a person, tasmat means therefore, guru prapadyeta. Guru, we know, means teacher. And specifically, a transcendental guru is one who's delivering teachings from transcendence, or of transcendence and from transcendence, this descending process. Tasmat guru prapadyeta. Prapadyeta means submission or surrender or taking shelter of. Prapadyeta. Tasmat guru prapadyeta. Jigyasu shreya uttama. So supposing I'm this jigyasu shreya uttama person, I want to know who is the rest of the text describes who is that right person? Who is the person I should go to? What's the qualification of guru? Tasmat guru prapadyeta jigyasu shreya uttama shabda pare cha means and. Shabda pare, shabda means hearing. Pare means transcendental or God, the realm of perfection. Shabda pare chanishnatam. And they've heard, and nishnatam means not only they've heard, they've realized. And not only they've heard and realized, but they are able to assist others. They demonstrate the quality of assisting others, having their questions resolved or addressed. Shabde parecha nishnatam. Brahmani indicates the absolute truth. Upasamashrayam means they left aside all material or trying to become an enjoyer of the material facilities. Upasamashrayam, they've left that to the side. They're absorbed in the absolute truth, Brahmani, and they've heard transcendence from this disciplic succession or the descending method, and they've demonstrated the capacity to help others become relieved of their doubts or give clarity where there's lack of clarity. That's the person. That's the guru. It's a nice text found in the Bhagavatam. So that's a qualification of, and the importance of, and in fact, necessity of. You can say it conversely. The converse is, if one isn't interested in what's beyond all this, then one doesn't need a guru. If supposing, for example, some persons think you go to guru when you have a malady and the guru is supposed to provide you a cure to your malady, your illness. And that's not the guru function. I mean, some gurus may have some knowledge of medicine or curing illnesses or something like that, but that's a different kind. That's a doctor. And within the Vedas, there is medicine, or some qualified Brahmins may know astrology along with astronomy and be able to indicate these are events that are going to happen in your life, and these are some strengths that you have, just looking at somebody's chart. But that's not a guru function. The guru function is delivering the soul to the transcendental realm. That's the function. And there may be other assets or abilities that person has. If they have, that's nice. If they don't have, that's nice. It's not the qualification, not the function. The function is to make the connection with what's beyond all the temporary features of this world. And two other verses. Another comes directly from the Upanishads. Tad vijnanartam sagurum eva abhigachet samatpani shrotriyam brahmanishtam. That's from the Mundaka Upanishad. I'll go through. It's nice. It's short. It's kind of like cryptic. Tad vigyanartam sagurum eva. Eva means certainly. So it's like emphasis, like exclamation point. Eva. Abhigachet. Abhigachet. I'm not a Sanskritist, but I've heard Prabhupada speak about it so many times. This much I understand. Abhigachet means it's not optional. It's imperative. Eva abhigachet. Tad vigyanartam. Vigyana, tad is a pronoun, means that person who. Vigyanartam, that person who wants realization. Tad vigyanartam sa, that person. Gurum eva abhigachet, that person needs a spiritual master. You can say it negatively. If that's not what you're interested in, you don't need a spiritual master. You don't need guru. You need sense objects so you can enjoy the senses and find out ways to get those sense objects. And that's another way of life. But the way of life of spiritual development is such a person who wants to know transcendence, wants to a life that's beyond the temporary, and find contentment in that within, life beyond the temporary, happiness within, then that it's imperative that person requires a spiritual master. And then the next line, samitpani. Samitpani literally means wood in hand. So wood in hand is just a short, cryptic way of saying when it's ready to render service to the spiritual master. Because traditionally, just like this yagya arena that's set up, it requires wood. When Krishna went to school, the school of Sandipani Muni, he and his dear friend Sudama were sent into the forest to gather wood for the yagya, the fire yagya. So samatpani means wood in hand, firewood in hand. It's an indicator of submissive and menial service. The mood of the disciple is submissive and menial service. Whatever, anything, service, some opportunity to render some service. That's samatpani means. That's a qualification of the person who's submitting to Guru. Samatpani, Shrotriyam. Again, this shrota means the same as the word shruti, that which is heard. Shruti, that which is heard. So Shrotriyam, that's a qualification of both Guru and disciple. They've heard, but specifically the Guru, they've heard. And Brahma Nishtam, they're fixed in knowledge of Brahma. Nishtha is a stage where it means steadiness. They're fixed in transcendence. The Guru is one who has heard, and they're fixed in transcendence. Now that's necessity. Going back to that, eva, certainly, abhigachet, necessity. So the topic that I was asked to speak about was the importance, and now I'm changing the language to necessity. There's a necessity. If one wants what's beyond the temporary. Now, in this world, there's not too many people. According to what the teaching of Bhagavad Gita is, out of many, many thousands of persons, millions of persons, hardly one is even asking the question of what's beyond the temporary. They're really involved in the temporary. And of those who have realized those who have realized themselves as also being part of that which is beyond the temporary, hardly one knows me in truth. That's Krishna's words in Bhagavad Gita. So not everybody needs spiritual teachings or spiritual teachers. because they're just not interested. And therefore, they're caught up in involving themselves with the temporary. You can call it, different names, but materialistic life that's just trying to find happiness in sense objects. And that person does not require guru. That person requires another kind of teacher, how to put senses together with sense objects and get happiness, and how to manipulate the objects of the senses in such a way that it looks like more happiness than before. It's called technology. How to manipulate the laws of nature in such a way you move this and you move that and you get a result, in effect, that looks like happiness. That's technology. So we're using technology. It's not poo-poo technology, but is what's the purpose behind it is what's the consideration. The consideration is making the connection with transcendence. So you can use those things that are temporary because they're from the source of everything. Use those temporary things to make that connection with transcendence stronger, more within your experience, because that's what guru and spiritual teachings are for, to connect with transcendence. And by transcendence, it's nice kind of euphemistic word, sounds nice. What is it? In a simple language again, that which is the source of everything, including material as well as spiritual, or spiritual as well as material, that's transcendence. And that what is that which is the source of everything? That's the inquiry. And I want to know, and not only I want to know, I want my consciousness to be connected with that source of everything in every facet of my life, every step, every activity, every moment. That's it's a long term, or that's again use this word preya, shreyas, shreya uttama. That's my objective. That's where I want the path of my life to go. And I don't know exactly what it is or even how to get there, but I know that's what I want. And then the picture starts to fill in when one has guru, and that light stays on. It doesn't become slackened. It continues over a period of time for elevation of consciousness, purification of unwanted things. That's the importance of a relationship with the guru. And summit pani, again that phrase, with a mood of humble service and eager to hear. And then when one hears, let me apply as best I can what I've heard. And then gradually, realization, vijnana, realization of what I've heard, starts to awaken within. And original Krishna consciousness is restored. That's the process and its importance. Some thoughts on this topic. I'll say there's one more verse that's very nice. I hope you don't mind Sanskrit verses, but they packed up there. They include a lot. The Sanskrit word for initiation, where the disciple connects with the spiritual master, who connects that disciple with the disciplic succession with Krishna. That's what initiation is. The Sanskrit word is diksha. Diksha, initiation. And the verse that our teachers, our gurus in disciplic succession give us, say that this process of diksha has two parts. One is imparting of knowledge, divyam jnanam yato dadyat, imparting of transcendental knowledge through the medium of submission, and even specifically through mantra. And divyam jnanam yato dadyat, second part, kuryat papasya sangshaya Papa means sin, and sins are cleansed away. Kuryat papasya, samshaya, without doubt. One's sins are taken away. Reactions from one's sins are taken away. Knowledge is awakened. At least the potency is there, or potential is there for knowledge to awaken. So it's a gradual submission process that gradually more and gradually more and gradually more knowledge is awakened through that submission process and through the chanting of mantra. And sins are washed away. Tata diksheti, this process of diksha is known in that way by those who are learned persons. Tasmat diksheti sa prokta deshikais tattvakovidai. Tattvakovidai, those who are learned in transcendental knowledge, tattvakovidai, they give this definition. So that's what the process of diksha is. It's a formal connection. The soul, through the medium of spiritual master, through the line of disciplic succession that goes to Krishna, and the acceptance by Krishna through the line of disciplic succession, through the medium of the current link in disciplic succession, accepting that soul as connected to Krishna. That's initiation. It's a formal process. And there's some formalities of mantra and procedure that go along with it commonly. But the essence is not the procedure or the formality. The essence is the submission and the acceptance. So there's some thoughts on the topic, the importance of guru or teacher. So leaving some time, if there's some online folks that want to discuss this, or somebody in the room wants to discuss this a little bit. Ah, namaste.
Can you speak to often find myself, what would my teacher do? And that is so helpful for me in situations.
Good.
As far as getting away from what my old pattern might have been
Sure.
to what I should do now.
Good. Making choices and moving forward instead of spinning and repeating patterns. Good. That gives direction, and then comes action from the direction. That's purification. The senses and the mind become purified by that process you described.
Talk about that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Bhagavad Gita. Chapter 6, Bhagavad Gita, the process of making the senses and the mind, and for that matter, the intelligence, become freed from patterns. It speaks in different terminology and patterns. A pattern, a Sanskrit term is vasana. It's a general tendency towards something, an impression from the past that then makes up not just a quick response, but a pattern type of response, how I process things. But those change by the yoga process. And of course, there's different types of yoga, different stages of yoga, but it speaks of it for sure. And then again, where you're going to go depends on the teacher and the teaching. And the teacher and the teaching, where you're going to go, depends upon their connection with Shreya Uttama. the the ultimate source of all things. Because there's teachers that know different things than the absolute truth, and they can teach you how to get to those places. That's their qualification. But certainly elevation. That, so then what's that teacher that has that connection? Yeah. How are we doing online? Anything? Everyone is shy. That's okay. Anything over here? We have a few audiences going on at the same time. Okay. Do we have a microphone for that someone? Here, do you want this microphone? Okay, you got it.
This is a question from Julian Gordon. How do we talk to people that are stuck in their own ways?
Could you bring the microphone? Bring the microphone. How do we speak to people who are stuck in their own ways? There's different approaches. And what happened here? Delicate. Okay. There's different approaches depending upon the person. But one approach, here's a few approaches, the people that are stuck in their ways. Give them prashadam, because that's going to purify no matter how stuck they are. Another is you ask them enough questions so that they understand, so you can understand what's the position they're stuck in, and they can understand that you've taken the time and trouble to understand their what their position is, what their nature or what's important to them, and so forth. This is one of the rules of communication that says first seek to understand before seeking to be understood. So if the person feels, this person that's stuck, feels that you care enough about them to understand them, then you may find they're a little more receptive to hear something other than their particular view that's a stuck view. No, there's no guarantee. But if they hear something that has wisdom, or say it even stronger, it has transcendence connected to it, it's going to have an impact even if they remain stuck. Especially if it's coming from a person that they have now concluded they actually are interested in me. They're not just fixed in their ideology, they're interested in me. And when someone feels that, they're more likely to hear than if they think you've just got some ideology, you want to reject their ideology and impose yours instead. Another approach, I know somebody that likes this approach, not always, but on occasion, they just are really strong. They're really strong. And, one has to be skilled and spiritually qualified to be strong and have it effective, because otherwise people will be resentful. I could give some examples, but, that's an option. If somebody's stuck, If you feel they have the capacity, so it's your intelligence, your discerning ability to see, do they have even the capacity or a slight willingness to be unstuck? You can be very strong and show them that their bucket has holes in it. Their stuck position isn't tenable. As I'm speaking, I'm thinking about a 9-year-old girl somewhere, and she has some friends that aren't vegetarian. So she has dialogue with them about becoming vegetarian. They have their rationale of why it's okay to not be vegetarian. And, they're stuck. And the 9-year-old is a little frustrated with her friends that are stuck. So, continue to be one of the most important assets to help somebody that's stuck is to be of good character consistently. And when another person sees, here's an individual of good character consistently, and they're internally, they radiate happiness. That's powerful. They're joyful consistently. They're not harsh. They're not judgmental. They're not, triggered. They're very fine people always. That's a power. That's a potency to help somebody that's stuck become unstuck. Because at some point they're going to have difficulty. They're stuck, and here comes a calamity. Now what to do? And they're likely to go to the person that's very happy, of good character, and very pleasant, and very kind, and seek some shelter, some support, some guidance. I'm thinking of a situation where that happened very, very strongly. It's a nice story. There was it's somebody I know uh, for a number of years was a high-ranking officer in the Board of Education for the city of New York. In fact, this person was in charge of all the guidance counseling divisions of all the public schools in the city of New York. How'd you like that job? Whew. And they had a supervisor. And the supervisor found out that their subordinate, the person who was answerable to them, was becoming involved in Krishna consciousness, and they freaked out. They freaked out, then the supervisor told them why. Hare Krishna people are cop-outs. They had this attitude. And the attitude was based upon when she was in college, she was like a super activist, an anti-war activist. And she saw the Hare Krishna people were just cop-outs. They were banging tambourines and singing and dancing and having nothing to do with anti-war protest. They were just singing and dancing and frolicking around and useless people. So her supervisor tried to convince her, don't have anything to do with these useless people. And so what did? She just smiled and continued her progress in Krishna consciousness. And in the course of her progress in Krishna consciousness, the supervisor noticed there were some transformations in her. And the transformations included she was always very contented. And the supervisor would go to her with any question, and her subordinate would already had the problem sorted out, made some recommendation when asked, and was otherwise sitting there reading her book very contentedly. And so she remarked to this devotee that's becoming involved, in the beginning stages, becoming involved in Krishna bhakti. And then some time passed, and her supervisor had a calamity. Her husband was diagnosed with cancer. She was upside down with anxiety. She went to her subordinate and said, I need peace of mind. Can you help me? said, how do you get your peace of mind? She said, I don't know if you want to know. She said, I want to know. He said, it's from the teachings and the teacher. Can I meet your teacher? So the supervisor came and sat in my office with her subordinate, and we talked about Krishna. But it took a calamity and the instrument of good character, excellent performance in the workplace, highly tuned in to what it takes to do that service that she was doing, and very profound contentment within. So that's a little anecdotal example. It doesn't always have a nice bow and ribbon and nice story at the end, but if, to help somebody that's stuck become unstuck, that's one way. Just be a person of good character and consistently happy and kind in all circumstances of life, even when other people are not. This is powerful. I can give some other examples. They're just anecdotal, but it's a principle. Okay, we got the microphone. Can you take the microphone?
I did ask this person if it's okay to ask their name, to say their names. It's a very personal question. Let's say a person is stressed mentally and in need of help.
Hmm.
And there are people around who needs help too. Who should we take care of first?
Immediately, my response is let go of the rescuer consciousness. That's not a Bhagavad Gita term, it's just a vernacular expression that you're going to rescue somebody, either yourself or another person. That's in Bhagavad Gita language, it's karta aham. I'm the doer. So let go of that misconception. Instead, take shelter of the conception that says, let me be an instrument of Krishna, or the instrument of mercy, who is the merciful as Krishna. And let me become qualified as an instrument before, so this is now addressing your question, according to your consciousness of being an instrument instead of a doer, then you can extend to that other individual according to your capacity mercy. So it's not first, because the question is chronology question. First become fit as an instrument to receive mercy, and then you can be a deliverer of mercy. But you're not rescuing another person or helping another person. You're just being an instrument of a receiver, an instrument of a transmitter. You can't transmit what you haven't received, so make sure your receiving capacity is well established, or you're in the process of establishing, and according to your capacity, you extend. But as an instrument, not as a one who's going to fix somebody or partially fix somebody. Let go of that conception. I think anything over here online?
This question is by Amalanama Das Prabhu. Is the development of good qualities accelerated in any way by connection to Krishna through Diksha?
Accelerated is the word? Oh, yeah. Not only accelerated, but substantial. By substantial, I mean there's things that are temporary, good qualities that are temporary, like the modes of nature manifest a good quality, another mode of nature becomes prominent, and there goes the good quality, and in come some other ones. A good person can become angry or greedy or lusty or, something, just by the shifting of the modes of nature. So distinct from that kind of good quality is transcendental quality. It's not resting upon time or circumstance. It's resting upon solid ground. It's resting upon Krishna and connection with Krishna. So that's the good quality. But yes, in response, even the qualities of goodness, elevation through the modes of nature is accomplished through bhakti, and long-term, permanent good quality that doesn't change with time and circumstance or the shifting of the modes of nature. Good times and difficult times, good qualities are permanently there. Anything else? Okay, we're done. It's 9 o'clock. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.